Lying in bed, it's late, the house is quiet, you are utterly exhausted, physically drained, but your mind? Your mind is running a marathon. It just won't stop talking. It replays a conversation from hours ago, dissecting every word, every pause. Did I say the wrong thing? How did they take it? Did they misunderstand my intention? Oh God, they probably think I'm incompetent, or rude, or foolish. And then, the spiral. Down you go, into that familiar rabbit hole, thoughts about how you always seem to mess things up, how you're not quite getting it right, how maybe you're just fundamentally flawed. Suddenly, your heart starts pounding against your ribs. Maybe you feel a flush of heat, a dampness on your palms. You feel utterly trapped, pinned down not by chains, but by the relentless churn of your own thoughts. Stuck inside your own head. Why? Why do we do this to ourselves? Why can't we just switch it off? Let things go. Find that elusive peace. That feeling of being stuck, that silent battle waged within the confines of our own minds, that is precisely what we're going to dive deep into today. Over the last decade, maybe a little more now, working as a psychologist, I've had the profound privilege, and sometimes the heartache, of sitting across from countless individuals. Students wrestling with exam pressure, CEOs steering multi-million-dollar companies, new parents questioning every decision, seasoned doctors facing life and death choices daily, people from every walk of life imaginable. And beneath the surface, so many of them grapple with this same invisible adversary, the relentless cycle of overthinking. Today, my aim is to help you understand what overthinking truly is, not just as a label, but as an experience. We'll explore why it takes root in our minds, how it manages to hijack our peace, our joy, our very ability to be present in our own lives. And, most importantly, we'll talk about how to begin loosening its grip, how to start breaking free. This won't just be a lecture filled with clinical terms, this is about the human experience. It's real, it's raw, and it's something millions of us navigate, often in silence. My hope is that by the end of our time together today, you'll not only understand the landscape of your own mind a little better, but you'll also feel a little less alone in whatever struggles you face. You'll see that this pattern, this struggle, doesn't define you. Let's start, as we often do in therapy, with a story. Let me tell you about a man I worked with some years ago. We'll call him Arjun. Arjun was in his early 30s, a brilliant software engineer, highly respected by his colleagues, known for his sharp mind and meticulous work. On the outside, looking in, he seemed to have it all figured out. Successful career, nice apartment, seemingly stable life. But behind closed doors, particularly when the lights went out, his mind would transform into a relentless battleground. A tiny, seemingly insignificant event from his workday, maybe forgetting to add an attachment to an email, or stumbling over a word during a brief update meeting, could become the spark that ignited a wildfire of anxiety. He wouldn't just think, oops, forgot the attachment, I'll send it now. No, his mind would leap. It would spiral. What if my boss thinks I'm careless, incompetent even? That thought would morph into, what if this mistake puts my performance review in jeopardy? What if they start looking for reasons to replace me? Which would then escalate further, what if I get fired? How will I pay my rent? What if I can never find another job as good as this one? What if I end up failing completely? Within minutes, sometimes seconds, a simple, fixable oversight had ballooned into a full-blown existential crisis, questioning his entire worth and future security. The initial trigger was small, almost laughably so in the light of day, but the internal reaction was monumental. He couldn't sleep. He started dreading going to work, avoiding participation in meetings where he might make another mistake. His usually stellar productivity began to dip, which, of course, only fueled the negative thoughts more. And here's the most insidious part, the part that really does the damage. He started to believe the thoughts. He didn't just have the thoughts, he internalized them. He started to truly feel that he was careless, that he was failing, that he fundamentally wasn't good enough. This is the silent, corrosive damage that overthinking inflicts. It's rarely about the objective reality of the situation. It's almost always about the story we tell ourselves about the situation, the meaning we assign, the catastrophic future we invent. So, what is overthinking, when we strip it down psychologically? At its core, overthinking is a pattern of thought characterized by excessive, repetitive, and usually unproductive thinking about a particular topic, problem, or event. It often involves dwelling on things that have happened or worrying excessively about things that might happen. Think of it like a cognitive hamster wheel, lots of movement, lots of energy expended, but ultimately, you don't really go anywhere. You just get more and more tired. Psychologically, we often categorize it under the umbrella of cognitive distortions, which are essentially patterns of thinking that twist or distort reality, usually in a negative direction. It's like looking at the world through a warped lens, one that magnifies threats and minimizes positives. There are two main flavors, if you will, of this pattern. The first is rumination. This is where your mind gets stuck chewing on the past, replaying events, conversations, mistakes, asking, why did this happen to me? What if I had done X differently? How could they have said that? You're mentally digging through the archives, often focusing on perceived slights, failures, or regrets, trying to understand or somehow mentally fix something that's already occurred. It's like trying to unscramble an egg, impossible, and deeply frustrating. The second flavor is worry. This is the forward-facing twin of rumination. It involves obsessing over the future, conjuring up potential negative outcomes, playing out what-if scenarios that often end in disaster. What if I fail the exam? What if the presentation goes badly? What if my partner leaves me? What if I get sick? Worry is fueled by uncertainty and a desire to control outcomes that are often, fundamentally, outside of our control. Both rumination and worry are deeply rooted in our brain's fundamental aversion to uncertainty. Our minds crave predictability, security, answers. When faced with ambiguity, whether it's the interpretation of a past event or the possibility of a future threat, the brain kicks into problem-solving mode. It keeps turning the issue over and over, desperately trying to find a solution, to gain certainty, to feel safe. The tragic irony is that with many of the things we ruminate or worry about, there is no neat solution to be found through thinking alone. How someone interpreted your comment last week? You can't know for sure just by thinking about it more. Whether you'll face unexpected challenges next year. No amount of worry can guarantee prevention, but the brain keeps trying, stuck in this loop, because doing something, even if it's just thinking intensely, feels more proactive than simply accepting the uncertainty. Neuroscience gives us some fascinating clues here too. There's a network in our brain called the default mode network, DMN. You can think of this as the brain's autopilot, or its idle state. It becomes active when we're not focused on a specific external task, when our minds are free to wander, daydream, reflect on ourselves, and, yes, ruminate and worry. For people prone to overthinking, this DMN can become hyperactive or dysregulated. Instead of gentle mind wandering, it becomes a powerful engine for looping negative thoughts. It's like having a well-meaning but incredibly persistent friend who constantly brings up your past mistakes or future anxieties, trying to help you prepare or understand, but inadvertently just keeps you stuck in distress. They won't stop offering advice, even when all you desperately crave is a moment of silence, a moment of peace. But what actually plants the seeds for this pattern? Why do some people seem more prone to getting caught in these mental loops than others? Let's go a little deeper into the roots. At its most fundamental level, overthinking often stems from a protective instinct. It's your brain's somewhat misguided attempt to keep you safe, to help you avoid future pain or repeat past hurts. Think about early human survival. Being hyper-aware of potential threats in the environment was crucial. That rustle in the bushes could be a predator. Planning for potential food shortages was necessary. A brain wired to anticipate danger and solve problems had an evolutionary advantage. Now, translate that mechanism to our modern, complex social world. Imagine a child who touches a hot stove. They feel pain, they learn quickly, don't touch that again. That's adaptive learning. It protects them from physical harm. Now, imagine a different kind of pain. Imagine a teenager who gives a presentation in class and is met with laughter or harsh criticism. They feel humiliated, ashamed, deeply wounded emotionally. Years later, that same person, now an adult, is preparing for a crucial team meeting at work. Their brain, remembering the sting of that past social pain, kicks into overdrive. The protective mechanism activates, but instead of a simple, be careful, it unleashes a torrent of worry. What if I stutter like I did back then? What if they think my ideas are stupid? What if they laugh at me? What if I completely freeze up and can't speak? This is also a form of learning, fear-based learning, but instead of leading to simple caution, it often leads to crippling anxiety, debilitating self-doubt, avoidance behaviors, like calling in sick, and a paralysis that prevents them from performing at their best, or sometimes, performing at all. This brings us to the biological underpinnings. Overthinking is intimately linked with the brain's fear circuitry, particularly a small, almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. The amygdala acts like the brain's alarm system. When it perceives a threat, whether it's a physical danger like a speeding car or a psychological threat like potential rejection or failure, it triggers the body's stress response, often called the fight or flight, or freeze, response. Hormones like cortisol and adrenaline flood the system, preparing you to confront the danger or escape it. This is incredibly useful if you need to jump out of the way of that car. But here's the problem: mental threats, worries about the future, regrets about the past, fears of judgment, aren't things you can physically fight or run away from. The perceived danger doesn't disappear after a few minutes. So, the amygdala keeps sounding the alarm, the stress response stays activated, and the mind keeps looping, trying desperately to analyze the threat, to find a way to safety, to regain control. But safety rarely comes from relentless thinking alone, especially when the threat is internal or uncertain. We end up stuck in this heightened state of alert, mentally rehearsing worst-case scenarios, dissecting past interactions for flaws, constantly scanning for danger signs. And over time, through repetition, this pattern of mental overactivation becomes deeply ingrained. It becomes a habit. Our brains actually create stronger neural pathways for these looping thoughts, making it easier and more automatic to fall into them the next time a trigger appears. We might even start to subconsciously believe that all this thinking, all this worrying, is somehow productive. That if we just think about it enough, analyze it from every possible angle, we'll finally figure it out, prevent the bad thing, or feel better prepared. But, as most of us know from painful experience, the opposite usually happens. Instead of clarity, we drown in a sea of possibilities and anxieties. Instead of decisive action, we freeze, overwhelmed by the potential consequences of any choice. We end up living almost entirely inside our heads, consumed by the dramas playing out there, and missing the actual life unfolding right in front of us. We're physically present at the dinner table, but mentally, we're back in that difficult meeting from yesterday, or catastrophizing about a deadline next week. We lose touch with the present moment, the only place where life truly exists. Let me share another story, someone we'll call Mira. Mira was a devoted mother of 2 young children, deeply loving, incredibly conscientious. But she was plagued by constant self-doubt about her parenting. If her child had a tantrum in the supermarket, her internal monologue wasn't just, "Okay, this is tough, let's get through this." It was, "What did I do wrong to cause this? Am I too lenient? Too strict? Are those people judging me? They probably think I'm a terrible mother." If one of her kids caught a cold, she wouldn't just care for them, she'd spiral into, "Did I miss an early symptom? Did I not dress them warmly enough? Should I have taken them to the doctor sooner? What if it turns into pneumonia because I waited?" She was constantly scanning her own behavior for mistakes, perpetually braced for criticism, either from others or, more often, from her own relentless inner critic. She wasn't facing any major parenting crisis. Her children were healthy, happy, and well cared for. But the internal pressure, the constant second-guessing, the weight of perceived judgment, became unbearable. Eventually, she found herself overwhelmed, tearful, feeling like a complete failure, not because of any objective reality, but because of the relentless, exhausting burden of her own overthinking. This illustrates the real, often hidden, cost. It's not just about lost sleep or wasted mental energy, though those are significant. It's a slow, insidious erosion of self-trust. When we constantly question our decisions, magnify our mistakes, and anticipate failure, we gradually stop trusting our own judgment, our own capabilities, our own intuition. And when self-trust diminishes, the world starts to feel like a much scarier, riskier place. Simple choices become agonizing. Taking action feels fraught with potential disaster. We might start avoiding challenges, delaying important decisions, or constantly seeking reassurance from others because we no longer trust ourselves to navigate life effectively. Our confidence, understandably, plummets. Our creativity can wither too, because creativity requires a willingness to experiment, to make mistakes, to tolerate uncertainty, all things that overthinking actively discourages. And our relationships can suffer deeply. Overthinkers often project their own anxieties onto others, assuming negative intentions, overanalyzing texts or silences, fearing misunderstanding, or withdrawing emotionally to avoid potential conflict or judgment. It can create distance and tension, even when connection is what we crave most. So, hearing all this, understanding the mechanics, the roots, the impact, it can feel a bit bleak. It can feel like we're wired this way, doomed to be stuck in these cycles. But here is the truly hopeful, empowering part: overthinking, despite its deep roots and powerful grip, is fundamentally a habit. A mental habit, yes, but a habit nonetheless. And like any habit, whether it's biting your nails or reaching for snacks when stressed, it can be changed. It requires awareness, intention, practice, and patience, but it is absolutely possible to shift these patterns. You can learn to quiet the noise, to step off the hamster wheel, to reclaim your mental peace. How? Let's talk about some practical, science-backed tools and approaches. These aren't magic bullets, they are skills. And like any skill, they get stronger with practice. Think of it like building muscle. It doesn't happen overnight, but consistent effort yields real results. First, name it to tame it. This sounds incredibly simple, but it's foundational. Awareness is the absolute first step. You need to notice when you're caught in the loop. The moment you catch yourself spiraling down that rabbit hole of rumination or worry, consciously pause and gently say to yourself, "Ah, there it is. I'm overthinking right now." Or, "That's the worry loop starting up." This simple act of naming does something crucial. It creates a sliver of distance between you, the observer, the can. When self-trust diminishes, the world starts to feel like a much scarier, riskier place. Simple choices become agonizing. Taking action feels fraught with potential disaster. We might start avoiding challenges, delaying important decisions, or constantly seeking reassurance from others because we no longer trust ourselves to navigate life effectively. Our confidence, understandably, plummets. Our creativity can wither too, because creativity requires a willingness to experiment, to make mistakes, to tolerate uncertainty, all things that overthinking actively discourages. And our relationships can suffer deeply. Overthinkers often project their own anxieties onto others, assuming negative intentions, overanalyzing texts or silences, fearing misunderstanding, or withdrawing emotionally to avoid potential conflict or judgment. It can create distance and tension, even when connection is what we crave most. So, hearing all this, understanding the mechanics, the roots, the impact, it can feel a bit bleak. It can feel like we're wired this way, doomed to be stuck in these cycles. But here is the truly hopeful, empowering part: overthinking, despite its deep roots and powerful grip, is fundamentally a habit. A mental habit, yes, but a habit nonetheless. And like any habit, whether it's biting your nails or reaching for snacks when stressed, it can be changed. It requires awareness, intention, practice, and patience, but it is absolutely possible to shift these patterns. You can learn to quiet the noise, to step off the hamster wheel, to reclaim your mental peace. Conscious self, and the thoughts themselves. You stop being completely fused with the thoughts and start seeing them as mental events passing through your awareness. You are not the storm, you are the sky observing the storm. This distinction is key. Second, shift from why to what. Overthinkers often get stuck asking why. Why did this happen? Why am I like this? Why do I always feel anxious? While understanding roots can be helpful, as we've discussed, constantly asking why in the heat of the moment often just fuels the rumination, keeping you stuck in analysis paralysis. Instead, try shifting to action-oriented or present-focused what questions. Ask, what am I actually feeling right now? Name the emotion: fear, sadness, frustration. What is one small thing I can do right now to take care of myself? Or, what is the next practical step I can take, even if it's tiny? This moves you from the endless loop of mental analysis towards constructive action or present moment awareness. Third, practice thought labeling. This is a powerful technique borrowed from cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. When you notice a problematic thought bubbling up, instead of automatically accepting it as truth, try labeling the type of thought it is. For example, that's catastrophizing, imagining the worst possible outcome. Okay, that's black and white thinking, seeing things in extremes, no middle ground. There's that mind-reading thought, assuming you know what others are thinking negatively about you. That's personalization, assuming everything is about you or your fault. By labeling the pattern, you diffuse the thought's power. You recognize it not as a factual report on reality, but as a product of a familiar, often unhelpful, thinking habit. It helps you see thoughts as thoughts, not as undeniable truths. Fourth, use the 5-5-5 method for perspective. When you're consumed by a worry or regret, ask yourself these 3 simple questions. Will this matter in 5 minutes? Will this matter in 5 days? Will this matter in 5 years? Often, the things that fuel intense overthinking in the moment shrink dramatically when viewed through a longer-term lens. That awkward comment you made? Unlikely to matter in 5 days, let alone 5 years. This exercise isn't meant to dismiss your current feelings, but to inject a dose of perspective and help gauge the true significance of the issue causing the spiral. Most daily overthinking simply collapses under this simple scrutiny. 5th, schedule your worry time. Yes, you heard that correctly. This might sound counterintuitive, even a bit silly, but it can be surprisingly effective. Designate a specific, limited period each day, say, 15 or 20 minutes, as your official worry time. When anxious thoughts or ruminations pop up outside of this scheduled window, acknowledge them briefly and tell yourself, okay, noted, but I'll think about this properly during my worry time at 7 p.m. Then, gently redirect your focus. During your scheduled worry time, let yourself worry, ruminate, analyze, but only for that allotted period. When the time is up, consciously shift your attention elsewhere. This technique helps contain the overthinking rather than letting it bleed into your entire day. It trains your brain to understand that there's a time and place for processing concerns, but it doesn't have to be all the time. 6th, get it out, journaling. Thoughts swirling endlessly in your head gain power from their chaotic, repetitive nature. Writing them down interrupts this cycle. When your mind feels like a tangled mess, grab a notebook or open a document and just dump the thoughts onto the page. Don't worry about grammar, structure, or making sense. Just let it flow. Get the worries, the fears, the replays, the self-criticisms out of your head and onto paper, or screen. Often, seeing the thoughts written down makes them feel less overwhelming, more manageable. You might notice patterns, or realize that some fears look less convincing in black and white. It externalizes the internal chaos. 7th, move your body. Overthinking is a profoundly mental, head-based activity. One of the quickest ways to interrupt intense mental looping is to shift your focus back into your physical body through movement. Go for a brisk walk, do some stretching, put on some music and dance, do jumping jacks, or even just engage in a physical task like washing dishes or tidying a room. Physical activity helps burn off stress hormones like cortisol, releases endorphins, which have mood-boosting effects, and forces your attention into the present moment and your physical sensations. It gets you out of your head and back into your life. 8th, cultivate mindfulness and use your breath. This is perhaps one of the most profound long-term strategies. Mindfulness meditation, contrary to popular belief, isn't about emptying your mind or stopping thoughts altogether. That's impossible. It's about learning to notice your thoughts without getting swept away by them, without judging them, without needing to react to them. It's about cultivating that observer self we talked about. Even simple breathwork can have an immediate calming effect on the nervous system. When you feel the spiral starting, try this. Inhale slowly through your nose for a count of 4, gently hold the breath for a count of 4, and exhale slowly through your mouth for a count of 6. The longer exhale helps activate the body's relaxation response. Repeat this for just a few minutes. It anchors you in the present and signals safety to your amygdala. Now, I want to be really honest here. Implementing these tools takes conscious effort and consistent practice. You won't magically stop overthinking overnight, especially if it's been a lifelong pattern. There will be days when the loops feel stronger, when the tools feel harder to use. That's okay. That's normal. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. It's about gradually learning to disengage from the overthinking process more often, more quickly. It's about catching the spiral earlier, choosing a different response, even if just sometimes. Each time you notice the pattern and choose to pause, breathe, label a thought, or go for a walk instead of fueling the fire, that's a victory. That's you rewriting the script, strengthening new neural pathways. One moment, one choice, at a time. Let me leave you with a simple image that sometimes resonates with people I work with. Imagine a young child walking home from school, shoulders slumped, dragging their feet, complaining about how heavy their backpack is, how much their back hurts. Their teacher walks alongside them for a bit, concerned, and asks to see inside the backpack. When they open it, they find it's filled not just with books, but with large, heavy rocks. Rocks the child picked up throughout the day, a worry about a test, a regret about a playground squabble, an anxiety about what might happen tomorrow. None of the rocks were truly theirs to carry in that way, certainly not all at once. That, in essence, is what overthinking often is. It's carrying burdens that aren't necessarily ours to solve right now, or ever. It's trying to control things that are fundamentally uncontrollable. It's living mentally in the landscapes of yesterday or tomorrow, while the precious, tangible reality of today slips by unnoticed. Please hear this. You are not weak or broken because you overthink. You are human. Your mind, in its own complex way, is trying to protect you, to make sense of the world, to keep you safe from perceived harm. But you, the conscious you, the deeper you, get to choose whether or not you believe every single thought that flashes across the screen of your mind. You get to choose which thoughts deserve your energy, your attention, your belief. You are not defined by the spirals, by the anxieties, by the ruminations. You are the awareness behind them. You are the one who notices them. And that core self, that inner watcher, has qualities of calm, clarity, and wisdom, even if they feel buried sometimes. So, the next time your mind starts its familiar frantic dance, maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow, try to remember this conversation. Try to pause, just for a breath. Take one conscious inhale and exhale. And remember, not every thought deserves a front row seat in your mind. Not every fear demands an immediate, panicked response. And you, yes, you, exactly as you are, right now, you deserve moments of quiet. You deserve peace of mind. You deserve to trust yourself and to live fully in the present. Thank you so much for spending this time, for listening, for being open. If anything we talked about today touched you, if you saw some of your own experience reflected in these stories or explanations, perhaps consider sharing this with someone else you know who might be silently struggling too. Sometimes just knowing you're not alone is the first step towards healing. And tonight, or the next time you find yourself lying awake, mind racing, maybe, just maybe, you'll be able to offer yourself a little compassion. Maybe you'll gently label the thought, there's worry again. Maybe you'll take that slow breath. And maybe, just maybe, you'll be able to softly whisper to that racing mind. Not tonight. It's okay, we can rest now.